Hello pot stickers and welcome back to another edition of The Pot Thickens. I thought today we would spend some time touring the garden. I showed you a live tour about a month ago, and I want to show you how everything is growing and producing right now. The garden is just exploding, and so come along, I'll give you a full garden tour. Okay, this is my garden, and I have this laid out in nice rows where I have plenty of room in between because I have the space to be able to spread out and let these vegetables really grow. And then I can try to keep most of the weeds down in between pretty easily when you have more room to do that. So I'm lucky that I don't have to cram everything together into a tight space, although there are maybe some advantages to densely planting vegetables. It does help keep weeds down, and you can get a lot of food from a small space. But when you have this much land, there's no reason not to. Now let's start with the peppers. I have several kinds of peppers growing, and actually what's interesting is I had thought I had planted some jalapeno peppers, and 3 of these pepper plants, you can see this pepper plant and this pepper plant and the one next to it, are growing a pepper which does not look like a jalapeno. And this looks like what is it, the shishito peppers. Actually, I didn't plan to plant shishito peppers, but I'm very happy that they're growing because I always wanted to grow them, and this is the first time that I've ever had them in the garden. The 4th plant that I did get from the nursery does look like it's a jalapeno, and you can see there's some jalapeno peppers starting to grow there, so I'm quite happy about that. On the other side here, I have another jalapeno plant which is just starting. This one's a hot one. The other one is a not spicy jalapeno, so it's a little bit sweeter. I also have some Anaheim peppers. Here are a couple of Anaheim pepper plants. They're growing just beautifully, and you can see they're starting to get loaded with peppers here. They're just coming on really nicely. So I have a couple of Anaheim pepper plants. I have a couple of banana pepper plants here. I mean, just look at this pepper plant. It is just loaded with peppers, and they're just starting to turn yellow, and I'm very happy they're coming out really nicely. On the other side, I have some sweet peppers. I have 4 pepper plants for sweet bell peppers, and I'm hoping they grow and become colored actually. But you can see there's some nice sweet peppers growing on these plants. Those are my peppers. Of course, what summer garden wouldn't be complete without beets? And I have 2 kinds of beets that I grow. One is a golden beet, and you can see here, this is growing really nicely. There's the beet right there, coming up nicely to size, some purslane weeds here. And those are doing quite nicely, but they didn't germinate that well, so I did plant some new ones. So I have some smaller beets coming along too for the golden beet varieties. And of course, red beets. These beets are growing nicely. You can see maybe down on this end, the size of some of these that are growing. I've already harvested some beets and made things like a beet curry, which I just love. And I did some pickled beet salad last night, which was really delicious. So those are the beets. Now I grew 2 kinds of radishes this year. One was a traditional like round red radish, and the other was the French breakfast radish. And I ate a lot of radishes from this garden plot, but the rest of these I'm just letting them grow. You can see they're getting a bit oversized. Here, look, take a look at this one here. That's a French breakfast radish, I think, that has just overgrown its size. And what I'm gonna do is let them go to seed, because what I really love to do is eat the seed pods that come out of those radishes. This other radish here, this is a Korean daikon or Korean radish that I'm growing, and I don't know if you can see here. Let's just, maybe I can pull one out here and show you. Let's just pull. Yeah, they're getting to be pretty good size. They'll get even bigger, but these are the best, sweetest kind of Asian radish you can get. I love the Korean radish better than, say, the Japanese daikon, because I find these to be more mild and sweet in flavor and good for a lot of different dishes. So that's the Korean radish. Okay, let's talk eggplant. I just adore eggplant, and I'm growing 4 varieties this year. This is an Asian variety, an Asian finger variety, which has light purple colored plants. You can see they're getting quite nicely sized. Again, I've already been harvesting from my eggplants, so I have 3 of those plants that are growing nicely. And then I have the other Asian style that's more purple in color. They get a little bit fatter, but not too large. And here you can see some of these eggplants growing here. Nice purple eggplants. They will get a pretty good size eggplant and also maintain the nice texture. I do love all kinds of different Asian eggplants because they are, for me, the best texture and the best flavor. So I have 4 of those plants here. So these are a couple of black beauties here. Oh, they're starting to starting to grow. Oh, these are nicely sized round eggplants. Oh yeah, these are loaded. We're gonna have a lot of eggplants this year. Here's another Italian variety. This is I think this one is the Black Beauty. That one's gonna grow the large Italian style eggplants. And I'm gonna be putting up some pickled eggplants this year in the Italian style, pickled with some vinegar and preserved under oil. Well, here are my monster tomatoes, and they are just growing like crazy this year. I have a whole row, like 8 plants, all of these San Marzano tomatoes. You can see they're just loaded, and these are the delicious San Marzanos. There might be some starting to ripen in here a little bit. I'm hoping I'm gonna get some of these coming pretty soon. So I have 8 plants because I do plan to make salsa and tomato sauces from those. Now, some of my other tomato plants aren't looking necessarily the best. You can see there's a little bit of wilt on this one. That's a celebrity. I'm not really happy with that hybrid variety. It hasn't really done well in my garden. I don't think I'm gonna plant it again. But I do have another variety called Cheyenne, and this one is growing really nicely, and it's just loaded with tomatoes. As soon as those start to ripen up, it won't be long now. These tomatoes are nice big size tomatoes. I also have a variety called Cannonball, and I do see there's a little bit of leaf curl on this too, and I don't think it's from the moisture. I hope it's not getting a disease or some kind of a wilt. The Cannonball tomatoes do grow quite nicely. You can see they're really big size, and they are about to ripen up here too. So I'm hoping these come through without being diseased, and I haven't had much diseases this year, but hopefully those will be good. And as I mentioned in my live garden tour, one of my favorite, I don't grow cherry tomatoes because they tend to split and crack really easily, but I do grow this variety called Juliet. And you can see they're a little bit elongated. They're a little bit larger than a cherry tomato, but are just as sweet and have delicious flavor. And you can see there's some starting to ripen down here. There's some way back in there. I see some red ones back there. I'll have to pick those out in a little bit. These are firm tomatoes. They do not crack, they do not split, and they have the sweetest, most delicious texture you can imagine. So Juliet is the variety. I don't think I'm gonna plant any other kind of cherry tomato than this one. Well, this year I was worried that I wouldn't have enough tomatillos because I couldn't find plants, but it turns out that the tomatillos I grew last year just seeded and self-seeded, and so I have so many volunteer tomatillos I don't know what to do with. And you can see the tomatillos here, or the green tomato. It's not really a tomato, it's a ground cherry. You can see they grow in a husk. Let me pick this out. This isn't fully developed, but you can see inside that husk is the tomatillo. There's a little baby tomatillo. These will get bigger, and I'm gonna have more than I need. I'll probably put a whole bunch in the freezer. I do just put these in the freezer, wash them, put them in a baggie, and seal them up and put them in the freezer. And then what you can do is you can cook them and make salsa, green salsa with them at any time of the year. And they work just perfectly that way. So, I mean, we have so many tomatillos that have just taken over. As I said, most of these are volunteers. I have been able to plant a couple that I found at a nursery, but again, I was worried. I planted them before all these volunteers showed up, but they're all growing so nicely. These are the ones that I bought. I don't remember exactly the variety, but maybe we can see in here somewhere there's some really large tomatillos that are forming on these. Oh yeah, if you can see right in here, look at the size of that one. It's filling out. Yeah, I think that one's ready. So you can see, oh yeah, look at that tomatillo. That's a nice sized tomatillo. I'll have to see if these taste good. This year it's been really hot and dry, and I have had a hard time getting my basil seeds to germinate because I would water it and they would just die from the dried ground. But here you can see I do have a few basil plants off my row that grew quite nicely, and so I have been eating fresh basil from these plants. I also did plant a few more seeds, so I have some smaller ones coming along too, and hopefully those will produce some nice basil so I can put up some pesto this year. Usually I grow a big hedge of basil and freeze a lot of pesto, but this year it just didn't germinate that well. I also have a few carrots that had spotty germination as well, but what is there? I think the carrots look nice and healthy, and they're growing really well, and I'm looking forward to having some fresh carrots, at least a few of them. In between, recently I just seeded some more cilantro plants because I love fresh cilantro, and I think you have to keep seeding it every couple of weeks throughout the summer so that you always have fresh cilantro. Now these are my peas. They grew pretty nicely, and I did get a good bunch of peas this year, and I have a few more pods here to harvest. But what's interesting about the peas this year is they grew a lot of tendrils. I mean, usually I see a lot more leaves than tendrils, but this year they are all fully tendrilled out and wanting to climb. So I don't know exactly why that is, but I don't care. The peas really taste really good. I love fresh peas, English peas, right from the garden, and they don't even make it into the house because I just eat them right here. I mean, let's take a look at this. I mean, look at those peas in there. Beautiful. Oops, I'm dropping them all over. Trying to do this one-handed. There you go. Beautiful peas. Here is my wall of cucumbers. Oh my gosh, the cucumbers have been so prolific. I planted 2 varieties this year, and both of them are from seeds that I collected. I usually grow this Asian variety, a Japanese cucumber, because I really love the texture and the flavor. They're crisp, they're crunchy, they grow these long, nice, usually pretty straight cucumbers. And the seeds are not as big in them as the usual sort of market cucumbers. But I also last year planted a cucumber called Marketmore that I was making pickles from. And I let some of those get ripe, and I collected the seeds and I planted them this year. And what turned out is that they are not Marketmore cucumbers. I think they crossed actually with the Asian cucumbers because they're kind of like a Marketmore, but kind of like the Asian cucumber. They taste like the Asian cucumbers, and I'm just happy because they have delicious cucumber flavor. They're juicy, they're crunchy, and they're delicious. If you remember from my live garden video, I showed you that I had just thrown in some fenugreek seeds and planted them, and this is what is resulting. I was hoping to use the fresh fenugreek, but I see that they're growing the pods nicely, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let these keep growing, and I'm going to collect the fenugreek seeds from those pods. It's the first time I've ever grown fenugreek. I just used fenugreek seed from my local Asian market that was sold in the Indian spice aisle, and I just planted them in the garden and they grew really nicely. So in India, this is called methi. Methi, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's used either as the green or obviously as the fenugreek seeds, methi seeds. Germination for lettuces this year has also been bad, but you can see I have like 4 lettuce heads. They're looking actually pretty good, and I think I'll be harvesting these pretty soon. The first and only lettuce of the year. If you know me, you know I love beans, and I have an amazing array of beans being grown in the garden this year. So let me show you the beans. This row of beans is actually related to a black-eyed pea. I got the seeds from a farmer down in Louisiana, and they are what the home gardeners grow down there called pink-eye purple hull peas. And you can see they're starting to form the pods. They grow sort of on the top. They have these beautiful like orange yellow flowers on them. And these pods will grow, a little bit longer. They'll fill out, and the pods will then turn purple when they get ripe. That's why they're called pink eye purple hull peas. And then the bean itself is like a white bean, but with instead of a black center, it has a pink center. Hence, it's called pink eye purple hull peas. And the gardeners in the South, Louisiana, Alabama, all those areas in the South, they know this variety very well because it's commonly planted in home gardens there. It does really well up here in North Dakota as well. So I grow them for the slightly green seeds inside, but I also let a lot dry, so I have dried beans all year long from these. Well, this little row here, little section of beans are my green beans. So these are the bush beans called Provider. I love that variety because they're very prolific and they grow really well. I just harvested, a good huge sack full of them just 2 days ago. And now I can see there's plenty of beans on here ready to be harvested again. So I got to get in here and do another picking of these. Now I'm growing a few different kinds of pole beans, a couple from seeds that I collected. So this one, I haven't seen too much of the pods yet, but they grow this sort of round yellow bean. It looks a little flat. I'm not sure exactly what these seeds are going to turn out to be, but I think they're somewhat related to an Italian yellow wax bean when they're ripe. And speaking of yellow Italian wax beans, this is a flat variety called Venice, and they are delicious. I love these beans. I see I have a lot to pick here. They grow very prolifically as a pole bean on this trellis fence here, and easy picking, very delicious. They cook up tender but keep their texture really nicely. And again, it's an Italian variety called Venice. I got those from Johnny Seeds. The other pole bean variety I have is the Chinese long bean, and these are really delicious. And of course, you can't buy them fresh here in my area, and that's why I grow them, because I do like to grow things that I can't get purchased locally. And these are starting to get close to, that one's ready to pick. You can see how long that is. Let me put it on my arm, maybe you can see. Yeah, it stretches all the way to my elbow, that long bean. These are also something that I let some of these dry in the fall and stay on here until they're mature and dry, and I collect the seeds and I plant them every year. They have a nice dark black seed inside when you let them get mature. But for the green beans or the Chinese beans, this is about when I like to pick them and harvest them. Well, this year I experimented with taking another bean I got in my local grocery store. These were dried chickpeas that I threw in the ground, and I didn't know what to expect because I've never grown them before. I've never seen the plant. And so what you can see is that these don't have the typical bean shape. They actually look like what might be like vetch or something, but you can see they have this sort of like small little leaves that frond out, and the chickpeas grow in these little pods. And so inside these pods, I don't think the beans are very mature yet. I don't feel them yet. So inside those pods, there are chickpeas growing, and I'm looking forward to trying them actually before they're fully mature when they're still green. I've heard that chickpeas, green chickpeas, fresh chickpeas are supposed to be really delicious, but I'm gonna let a lot of them dry too and see how it comes out. So I have a big long row of chickpeas here. Here's another dried bean I grow, and they are loaded with beans. This is a local variety from a company here in North Dakota called Dakota Bumble, and they grow these nice dried beans that are variegated in color. And apparently the story is it was a cross between two bean varieties that they had in their garden because a bumblebee cross-pollinated the bean plants. So I don't know if that story's true, but that's their story and they're sticking to it. These don't make very good green beans unless they're picked really young and tender. Like that, you could probably eat it, but once they get to this size that you would think it would be a good green bean, the pod is rather fibrous and tough. Here are some broad beans or some fava beans. I don't see a lot of big pods on them, but they are coming. There's a lot of flowers on here, and I think each one of these flowers is going to become a pod. So those are my fava beans. And the beans continue. Let's keep going. This is a big long row of my favorite red bean in the world. These are El Salvadorian beans called Frijol Rojo de Seda. They are a red satin bean, and they're small little beans, and they cook up just the most delicious, delectable bean you've ever had. And a friend of mine gave me a bag of these, again, that was sold for cooking, and I just threw them in the ground, and they grew really well here. And so I plant them every year. I collect the seeds, so I have all my own El Salvadorian satin beans every single year. Oh, they're starting here, and they will turn red inside when they're done. Yeah, there's some beans growing. Excellent. And because I have them, I grow pinto beans as well, and they grow for dried beans. And what's amazing is you can see these are really tall and vining. And I don't think commercially when they grow pinto beans, they grow them on trellises or anything. But what I'm seeing is that maybe these would be better supported on a trellis. You can see that they're really vining out here and might do better, but I have plenty of space here, and I think they're gonna do just fine when they're growing on the ground. I'll let these, of course, get dry, and they will then be, harvested and threshed, and I'll be able to get those dried beans out of the pods. So those are pinto beans. Again, pinto beans that I just gathered from the store, from a bag of pinto beans, and I planted them in the garden. The first time I planted summer squash, zucchinis and yellow squash out here, I planted a big long row of them, and I had more zucchini than I know what to do with. So now I know that I should only plant 1 or 2 plants of each kind, because just look at these. These are incredible. They're actually up to my waist in height, and they are growing so prolifically, and I'm pulling off pounds and pounds and pounds of summer squash almost every single day from these. It is zucchini season, so if you come out here, you might end up leaving, and when you get home, you'll find that your trunk is just stuffed full of them. So be careful if you come out to visit me. This monster is a patty pan squash, and this is a yellow patty pan. Patty pans are really delicious and have a really good firm texture. It's like a summer squash, so you can eat the skins on these. I have a lot here to harvest. Oh my gosh, I just harvested these a few days ago, and just look how big they're getting. You can slice them and fry them, you can bake them, you could cut them up into cubes just like you would any summer squash. Here's a green zucchini variety with a smooth skin, sort of your traditional zucchinis. Let's see what we have under here. Oh, what is it I spy down there? Oh my gosh, that's already a monster. I've got to pick that before it'll double in size by the end of the day, so I better get that one out of there. Zucchini grows so fast. I like the zucchini, but my favorite varieties are this variegated variety here. This is an Italian variety, a Romanesco variety, and you can see that they have really nice stripes on them. Here's some down here. You get your camera under there. There you go. See how they are nicely striped and ridged? They are delicious. They have beautiful texture when you cook them, and it is my favorite variety of zucchini. Now you might be looking at these leaves and saying, uh-oh, you have powdery mildew going on. What's all those white specks? But this is not powdery mildew. You can tell powdery mildew if you look underneath and you see a white powder, and these are perfectly healthy leaves. This is just a natural variegation that you sometimes find in squash. Sometimes they'll show that early on and the color will go away, and sometimes like this one, it can last the whole season long. So don't confuse this with powdery mildew, because there is no fungus or mildew on this plant at all. And these are yellow squash called Sunshine, and these also grow really well. They're really tasty. I think it's Sunshine. I'd have to double check that, but I got again these from Johnny's Seeds. Oh my gosh, there's yeah, they're growing big. I've got to get in here and pick these squash before they just take over. It is just loaded with squash in there, and oh my gosh, yep. There's more squash down there, more squash down there, and I only have like 5 or 6 plants like in 2 circles here. It is just amazing. I'm growing 3 kinds of watermelons this year. I actually planted 4, but one of them didn't germinate, and that is a variety called Strawberry. I might give it another try, but we'll see. Anyway, this is a variety called Pollinator, and these are growing into nicely sized melons. I have quite a few melons already in here. You can see they're shaping up very nicely. There's another one over here. I see there's one buried in the leaves over here. And there's some over there. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of melons on this. Oh, there's another one hidden under there. Watermelons, these plants look a little low, but the watermelons just hide underneath those leaves. This looks like it's going to be one of the best producers I have this year. Another variety I have is called Ocelot, and I've never grown this before. They have cute little watermelons, and you can see this interesting shape for the watermelon. Really, really cute watermelon. I don't know what they're going to end up looking like in the end. We'll see. But you can see there's quite a few little ones. There's a little one over there. And you can see these vines are really trailing out. I gave them a lot of space to grow and planted just, they were tiny little seedlings over there. And they're growing all the way, almost reaching my pinto beans now. By the end of the season, this is going to be completely filled. You probably won't see any dirt here. Finally, I have a variety called Congo. This grows into quite a large melon, and they are sweet and delicious, and they have seeds. I prefer the seeded watermelons because they tend to have more flavor. Oh, I see there's one right here. I don't know that they grow a lot of them, but I'm going to get several good-sized watermelons. This is a little bit bigger, than the length of my hand stretched out. It's going to grow into a nice size, full-size melon that's going to be just delicious. So that is my watermelon. And my back garden. Here we are in my back garden where I grow my potatoes, my onions, my corn, and other things here. I'll show you how well these are doing because it's almost harvest time for these. If you remember from my live video of the garden tour, I don't remember if this part got cut out or not, but I had beautiful lush looking potatoes, and you can see that they're starting to die back now. These are ready for harvesting. I think I got to get in here and dig these up pretty soon. This first one is called Huckleberry Gold, and it is a purple-skinned yellow potato, which has this delicious creaminess like a Yukon Gold, but has a really lovely purple skin. Let me see if I can find, yeah, there's one right there for you. So it's a Huckleberry Gold. It's got a dark purple skin. It has lots of anthocyanins and healthy things, and it's a lower in carbohydrates than other potatoes. So this is a really healthy potato. Huckleberry Gold, really delicious. I also have a white variety called Dakota Pearl. Boy, these are ready for harvest. You can see that they're really falling down and dying back. Some of them are peeking out here. This is a white potato. Yeah, a little green. What happens when it gets a little bit of sun. There are some larger ones underneath, but this is a white potato called Dakota Pearl. It's a good tasting tomato. It's not as starchy as a russet, and it has a really good flavor as well. So Dakota Pearl. I have 2 rows of Dakota Pearl here that I gotta dig up. And my favorite is a red potato. These grow really, really large and delicious, and they are good. And so I bet I can find some down here. Yeah, there's a big red potato. See how big that is? Oops, I don't want to pull the skin off. There's a big one. I mean, that's a big sized potato, and I know there's tons of them in the ground. So I'm going to get probably several hundred pounds of these red potatoes from these 5 rows that I have here. Well, the onions are doing nicely. Some of them are already starting to fall over on their own, and they will bend over and cure. And what I'll do is I'll leave them out here for some time for the skins to dry, and then I'll string them up and store them for the winter. I have a red variety. I mean, boy, look at the size of that bulb. That's a nice looking onion. That's going to be really delicious. I have a red variety and a yellow variety. And I grow my onions from onion plants, not the sets, because the sets are oftentimes bolt more easily because they think they're in their second year of growing. These are planted from the actual plants from the first year growth that I purchased from Johnny's Seeds. I usually start my own onion seeds, but I didn't get them going this year. They have to be started really early because they're slow growing. So like January, I would plant these indoors. But this year I just bought the onion plants and planted them, and they're coming up really nicely. Just for a splash of color, I threw in a row of zinnias. I just love zinnias. They start blooming in July and they'll bloom until frost with this beautiful array of colors and wonderful flowers. These make great cut flowers too because they last for a long time in a vase. These are just some zinnias, just a standard zinnia mix that I got. I don't remember where I purchased the seed from, but I buy the seed in like 5-pound bags and plant them all over my farm because they just add color throughout the summer. Well, I haven't had a chance to water my corn much this year. I'm hoping that the drought doesn't diminish the size of the cobs, but you can see that they're all nicely tasseling out and the cobs have silk on them, and so they're all getting nicely fertilized and should be growing corn right now. I have only two rows of sweet corn. The others are corn for drying, and these are seeds that I saved. As I had mentioned before, I usually grow an Oaxacan green corn and then a blue corn and a yellow corn, but some of the cobs that I harvested last year in my corn were like a red color, and so I collected those and planted them. So this is a red variety. And then I had some other cobs that were kind of like rainbow colors, so I saved those seeds and planted those also. So I have 4 rows of the red and 4 rows of the rainbow color. Now you can see how tall these are. These plants are over my head. They are really, really tall. And these dried corn varieties tend to grow really tall and nice. They make a great little cornfield. And if you wanted to make a corn maze out of it, I guess this would be a good variety to do it. And here are my winter squashes for saving. I have a butternut squash, I think I have an acorn squash, and I have a small sweet cooking pumpkin. I don't know if any of the squash is formed yet. They're starting to vine out really nicely now. I see lots of flowers in there, but I'm not sure if I see. Oh yeah, there's a little bit of squash. Sorry, this is the butternut squash. Did I say acorn squash? Butternut squash. I don't remember what I said. Butternut squash. Here is also butternut squash. Maybe I planted 2 butternut squashes. I don't remember now what I put in here. I do know that these are a pumpkin. These are a delicious small little pumpkin. I think this is called Cinnamon Girl. Oh yeah, we can see a nice pumpkin down here. And they grow into a nice cooking pumpkin. You can use it like you would any kind of a squash, or they actually look good for decoration as well. Oh, that one's probably closer to the size that they will get. Nice little small pumpkin, and those will all turn orange here in probably a few weeks. They'll start turning orange. I planted a row of sunflowers for some color, although I don't think they're blooming that great this year, and that may be due to the dry conditions, but they are looking pretty good. They've grown up really tall and they're nice.